Alexander never imagined that a single morning could change the rhythm of his entire life. The sun had barely begun to seep through the tall windows of his mansion, spilling weak streams of light onto the polished marble floors. Yet, despite the sunlight, the house felt colder than usual, as if the walls themselves were still mourning a loss that had never healed. Alexander's footsteps echoed through the hallways, precise and measured like a man trapped in a life, dictated by silence rather than laughter. He was a millionaire, a man who had everything the world could offer: luxurious cars, lavish parties, estates scattered across continents, but his wealth was nothing compared to the emptiness he carried within. 3 years ago, Clara, the love of his life, had passed away, giving birth to their twin sons, leaving Alexander with a fortune that felt heavier than any burden he had ever known. The twins, Ethan and Noah, were precious and delicate, but life had not granted them the same joys most children experienced. Deaf since birth, the world they navigated was silent, and yet Alexander's grief had made his presence just as distant as the quiet that enveloped them. He loved them, of course, but love had become a careful, measured thing, wrapped in duty and responsibility, never in warmth or closeness. The boys moved through the mansion like shadows, their tiny hands tracing the edges of walls, their eyes seeking things invisible to anyone else. Laughter, mischief, even simple cries for attention. They had never experienced those moments fully. And the mansion, once a place of grandeur and celebration, had become a silent museum of memories. Frozen in sorrow, then she appeared, Sophia Morales. There was nothing remarkable about her at first glance, no grand credentials, no impressive titles, just an air of quiet confidence, and a warmth that seemed to spill from her smile without effort. She had come to manage the household, a simple task in a house that demanded precision, but what she carried with her, though invisible to most eyes, was something far greater than any resume could explain. She carried life from her very first day. Sophia noticed the unusual rhythm of the mansion. It was not the rhythm of life, nor the pulse of a household filled with joy. It was the rhythm of absence. The rooms, despite their ornate design and expensive furnishings, felt hollow, each object echoing a loss rather than a story. She watched as Alexander moved through the hallways, sharp, efficient, his gaze rarely meeting anyone's, as though the world itself had betrayed him. The boys were no different. Ethan and Noah were quiet, observant, their attention drawn to things invisible to everyone else. And yet when Sophia approached them, offering a gentle smile or a hand to hold, something unspoken began to stir in the depths of their eyes. It happened one morning, not long after Sophia had started. Alexander, lost in his usual routine, had descended into the kitchen, expecting the same empty silence that had greeted him every day for years. But today, the air was different. He paused at the doorway, his eyes narrowing in disbelief. There, in the middle of the kitchen, were his sons, their small feet moving in patterns he could not comprehend. Sophia's hands guided them, her face glowing with encouragement, as if she were teaching them a secret language known only to joy itself. It was a dance, simple yet mesmerizing, and for the first time in years, the mansion vibrated not with wealth or grandeur, but with life. Alexander's breath caught. His first instinct was disbelief. He wanted to turn away, to convince himself that the image before him was a trick of memory or a fleeting illusion. But the boys' faces, radiant, focused, and full of delight, could not be denied. Ethan's eyes sparkled as he attempted to match Sophia's movements, and Noah, usually withdrawn, laughed silently, clapping along in a rhythm only he and Sophia could hear. Alexander had not realized how long it had been since he had felt such a raw, pure moment of happiness. His grief, carefully layered and meticulously hidden, threatened to crumble under the sheer force of what he was witnessing. And then, in a voice caught between awe and fear, he whispered, "What are they doing?" Sophia turned to him, her smile calm yet filled with meaning, and said simply, "They're learning to feel joy, sir, in their own way, in a way the world never showed them." Alexander wanted to speak, to question, to pull himself back into the fortress of his control, but words failed him. Instead, he simply watched, his heart pounding in ways it hadn't in years. It was as if the mansion itself was breathing again, exhaling decades of sorrow in a single, silent dance. He realized then that wealth, power, and status meant nothing if the heart remained imprisoned in grief. And in that moment, something fragile yet unstoppable began to awaken within him, a desire not just to live, but to truly feel, to connect, to heal. The kitchen, once a place of mundane routine, had transformed into a sanctuary of emotion, a stage for a miracle that Alexander had not known he needed. And for the first time in a long time, he allowed himself to hope. Because that morning, Alexander Hayes learned a truth he would carry for the rest of his life. Sometimes, joy arrives in the most unexpected ways, through the smallest hands, in silence, in ways we never imagined. And sometimes, the people we think are ordinary are the very ones who show us the extraordinary. Days passed since that morning, yet Alexander could not erase the image from his mind. The memory of his sons moving with such effortless joy, guided by Sophia's patient hands, played on a loop in his heart. It was as though a veil had been lifted, revealing colors and light he had forgotten existed. He found himself standing at the kitchen doorway more often than he realized, watching Ethan and Noah as they attempted new steps, sometimes faltering, sometimes succeeding, their faces alight with accomplishment. Each small movement seemed monumental, a victory not just for the boys, but for the very soul of the house itself. Sophia noticed his silent observations and smiled, understanding without words. She had always believed that children could heal spaces just as spaces could reflect children. Her gentle presence had opened a door to possibilities Alexander had never allowed himself to consider. That morning had been a beginning, but the days that followed revealed something even more profound. Transformation does not happen in a single moment. It grows quietly, in small, almost imperceptible ways. One afternoon, while Alexander was working in his study, he heard the soft tap of little feet approaching. He looked up, expecting the usual distant, cautious glance from his sons. Instead, they approached him together, Ethan reaching out his tiny hand and Noah clutching Sophia's sleeve for courage. Alexander froze, unsure how to respond. He had spent years avoiding moments like this, terrified that any connection would open wounds too deep to bear. Yet the boys waited, patient, their eyes shining with anticipation. "Come, sit with us," Ethan signed, his hands precise yet hesitant, as if unsure whether the gesture would be understood. Alexander felt a lump rise in his throat. He nodded, barely able to speak, and motioned for them to climb onto the couch beside him. For the first time in years, he felt their presence not as a reminder of loss, but as a promise of something new. Sophia quietly moved to the side, watching, her expression a mixture of pride and reassurance. She had understood from the start that Alexander needed time, that love, like music, could not be forced, it had to be felt. That afternoon, the mansion felt warmer, as though it too were learning to breathe. Alexander allowed the boys to show him their dance again, their movements still clumsy in parts, but growing more confident with each attempt. He realized that he had been blind to the beauty of their determination, the quiet courage in their eyes, the resilience in their small, silent world. Each misstep they took was met with laughter, each success with celebration, and in that celebration, Alexander found something he had not known he was missing: connection. Sophia began introducing new ways for the twins to express themselves, simple gestures and movements that transcended the limitations of silence. She taught them how to create rhythms with their hands, how to use movement to communicate emotion, and how to find joy in the smallest of victories. Alexander watched as their world expanded beyond the walls of the mansion, beyond the grief that had so long confined them. For the first time, he began to understand that their silence was not a barrier, but a unique language waiting to be embraced. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the mansion in a golden glow, Alexander found himself walking with the boys through the garden. The scent of blooming flowers filled the air, and the soft rustle of leaves seemed to whisper encouragement. Ethan and Noah moved ahead, improvising a small dance on the grass, Sophia following with gentle guidance. Alexander paused, letting them move freely, and felt a wave of emotion that left him breathless. He realized that he had been living in fear of failure, fear of loss, fear of feeling too deeply, and that the boys, in their pure, unguarded way were teaching him courage. In that moment, Alexander made a silent promise to himself. He would no longer be a passive observer in his own life. He would engage. He would connect. He would allow himself to love fully and without reservation. The mansion, which had once been a place of sorrow, now held the potential for laughter, for discovery, for moments that could change the course of their lives forever. And then, one morning, it happened again, the moment that would redefine everything Alexander had believed about happiness and healing. He walked into the kitchen, expecting only to find Sophia preparing breakfast, but there they were, Ethan and Noah, moving in perfect harmony, improvising steps and gestures with confidence he had never seen before. Sophia's guidance was subtle, almost imperceptible, yet the boys radiated joy in every motion. Alexander stopped in his tracks, his heart swelling with a mixture of pride and awe. "What are they doing this time?" he whispered to Sophia, barely able to contain the emotion in his voice. "They're creating their own music," she replied softly, "a rhythm that only they can hear, a dance that speaks their hearts. And now you can hear it too, in a way that matters most." Alexander realized then that the mansion was no longer just a house. It was a living testament to resilience, to love, and to the extraordinary power of human spirit. In the silent, radiant movements of his sons, he found the courage to hope again, to feel again, to embrace life in its most authentic and beautiful form. From that day forward, every morning held the promise of wonder. Alexander learned to watch without expectation, to celebrate without judgment, and to listen without words. The mansion, once defined by absence, was now alive with the quiet, unstoppable rhythm of joy, hope, and love. And Alexander knew deep in his heart that this was only the beginning of a journey that would change them all forever. It was a quiet evening, the kind of stillness that makes the world feel suspended between past regrets and future possibilities. Alexander sat in his study, the fading sunlight spilling across his desk, illuminating documents he had long ceased to care about. The mansion, which had once felt like a fortress built from grief, now pulsed with a subtle energy. From the kitchen, he could hear faint laughter, the rhythmic tapping of tiny feet against the floor, a sound so unfamiliar and yet so welcome that it made his chest ache. He rose and walked toward the noise, his curiosity stronger than his hesitation. As he approached the kitchen, he froze. There, in the center of the room, Ethan and Noah were dancing again. But this time something had shifted. The boys moved with purpose, improvising in ways that went beyond the lessons Sophia had taught them. Their gestures were confident, expressive, filled with emotion that transcended words. Sophia stood nearby, her eyes shining, encouraging them but allowing them to lead. Alexander felt a lump rise in his throat. It was as if the boys were no longer learning, they were teaching. For years, Alexander had believed that wealth and success could shield him from pain. He had thought that his meticulous routines and endless work could fill the void left by Clara's absence. But the truth was undeniable. The mansion had always mirrored his own isolation. And now, in this simple kitchen, his sons were showing him something far greater than any fortune could provide. They were teaching him the language of joy, of resilience, of pure, unguarded life. He stepped closer, unsure whether to interrupt or to remain a silent observer. Ethan caught his gaze and smiled, a smile so genuine it made Alexander's knees weak. Noah, sensing his father's presence, reached out a hand and signed slowly, deliberately, "Dance with us." Alexander's heart raced. The request was simple, yet it carried a weight he had never expected. How could he, a man who had spent years imprisoned in his own grief, step into a world so foreign, yet so vital? And yet, something within him stirred a flicker of courage, the same courage that had drawn Sophia to the mansion and inspired the boys to dance in the first place. He took a tentative step forward, and then another. The boy's eyes sparkled, and Sophia's smile widened ever so slightly. Alexander joined the dance, clumsy at first, unsure of his movements, but gradually the rhythm began to seep into him. Each step, each gesture, was a small rebellion against the walls of sorrow he had built around his heart. The mansion, once a silent witness to his grief, seemed to come alive around him. The walls no longer echoed emptiness, They resonated with the rhythm of rediscovered life. As he danced with his sons, Alexander realized that this was more than just movement, it was communication. A bridge between worlds that had seemed irreparably divided. Ethan twirled with delight, Noah clapped along with perfect timing, and Alexander laughed a sound he had almost forgotten how to produce. For the first time, he felt the absence of Clara not as a void, but as a space that could be filled with new memories, new joys, new love. The days that followed were transformative. Alexander began to participate actively in the boys' daily routines, not as a distant observer but as a fully present father. Sophia continued to guide the boys, teaching them ways to express themselves through movement, gesture, and imagination. But now Alexander was part of the process, learning as much from them as they were from him. The mansion, once a monument to sorrow, became a playground of creativity and discovery. One afternoon, Sophia suggested they take the boys outside to the garden. The air was crisp, filled with the scent of blooming flowers and the soft hum of nature. Alexander watched as Ethan and Noah improvised dances among the trees, their movements fluid and joyful, their laughter silent but palpable. Sophia encouraged them gently, but the boys were clearly in command, creating their own rhythms, exploring new forms of expression. Alexander felt tears prick at the corners of his eyes. He had never imagined that such simple acts could carry so much power, could break down the walls of grief so completely. As the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the garden, Alexander found himself reflecting on his own journey. He had spent years chasing success, measuring life in achievements and possessions, and yet none of it had mattered until this moment. The love, the connection, the courage to be vulnerable, these were the true treasures. And in the fearless, radiant spirits of his sons, he saw the reflection of hope, resilience, and the extraordinary potential that life held, even in the face of unimaginable loss. That evening, back inside the mansion, Alexander sat quietly in the kitchen, watching the boys playfully mimic Sophia's gestures. He understood, in a profound way, that life was not meant to be lived in isolation, nor was happiness a reward for the fortunate. It was found in moments like these, in the courage to embrace joy, to connect, to trust in the possibilities of tomorrow. And somewhere deep within, Alexander knew that this was only the beginning. His sons had already taught him one of life's greatest lessons, that even in the silence, even after the deepest sorrow, love and joy could flourish, uncontainable and unstoppable. And he would spend the rest of his life ensuring that their world, and his own, would never again be defined by absence or grief. The mansion, once a monument to loss, had become a sanctuary of hope, a testament to the transformative power of love and courage. And Alexander, Ethan, Noah, and Sophia stood at the threshold of a future filled with possibilities, ready to embrace a life that was richer than any fortune, deeper than any achievement, and infinitely more meaningful than he had ever imagined. The following morning brought with it a quiet tension that Alexander couldn't quite place. The mansion, alive with the energy of the previous days, seemed to hold its breath, as though it knew something was about to change. Alexander wandered the halls, his thoughts heavy but tinged with anticipation. He had experienced joy, connection, and the beginnings of healing. Yet there was a sense that the next lesson life had in store would test not only his resilience, but the courage of his sons as well. He found Sophia in the kitchen, arranging breakfast with her usual calm precision. She looked up as he entered, her eyes meeting his with a knowing glance. There was a subtle energy about her today, one that spoke of preparation and purpose. Alexander, sensing that something significant was about to unfold, nodded silently, willing himself to stay present and open to whatever was coming. Ethan and Noah appeared shortly after, their small faces radiant with anticipation. Today, they seemed more determined, their movements purposeful, as though they themselves sensed that a new challenge awaited them. Sophia guided them to the center of the kitchen, her hands steady, her encouragement gentle but firm. "Today," she said softly, "we're going to try something new, something that will test not only your rhythm, but your courage and trust in each other." Alexander watched, curiosity mingling with awe, as Sophia introduced a series of exercises designed to expand the boys' understanding of movement and emotion. It wasn't just about dancing, it was about communication, about expressing themselves in ways that transcended the silence they had lived in all their lives. The exercises were challenging, requiring focus, balance, and most importantly, trust. Alexander felt his chest tighten as he observed their small hands trembling with effort, their faces a mixture of determination and fear. At first, mistakes were inevitable. Ethan stumbled over a step, Noah faltered mid-gesture, and for a moment, frustration threatened to take hold. But Sophia's calm presence, combined with the boys' innate resilience, turned each misstep into an opportunity for growth. Alexander saw the transformation happening before his eyes, fear giving way to courage, hesitation replaced by confidence. It was a slow, painstaking process, but one that revealed the extraordinary strength of their spirits. Then came the moment that would change everything. Sophia guided the boys into a coordinated sequence, one that required them to move together in perfect harmony, relying entirely on nonverbal cues, intuition, and trust. Alexander's heart raced as he watched them attempt it. Their movements were uneven at first, hesitant and uncertain, but gradually something incredible happened. The boys began to synchronize, their actions flowing seamlessly, their expressions filled with joy and pride. It was a dance not just of the body, but of the heart. Alexander felt tears prick at his eyes. For the first time, he realized that the lessons Sophia had been teaching went far beyond movement or expression. She was teaching them and him the power of perseverance, the importance of trust, and the beauty of embracing vulnerability. The mansion, once a place of sorrow, had become a classroom for life itself, where the most profound lessons were learned not through words, but through experience. The boys, sensing Alexander's presence, turned toward him with radiant smiles. Ethan reached out and signed, "We did it, Papa." Noah echoed the gesture, his tiny hands trembling with excitement. Alexander, overwhelmed by emotion, closed the distance and knelt before them. He embraced both sons, holding them close as tears streamed down his face. For the first time in years, he felt the full weight of connection, of love, of unspoken understanding. Sophia watched silently, her own heart swelling with pride. She knew that this moment was a turning point, not just for the boys, but for Alexander as well. The journey of healing was far from over, but the walls of grief had begun to crumble, replaced by hope, courage, and the undeniable power of human resilience. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the mansion in a warm, golden light, Alexander reflected on what he had witnessed. The boys' determination, their joy, and their courage had revealed something profound. Life's greatest victories often arise from the smallest acts of bravery, from the willingness to trust, to fail, and to rise again. He understood, in a way he never had before, that true strength was not measured by wealth, success, or status, but by the ability to embrace life fully, to nurture love, and to persevere in the face of adversity. In the days that followed, Alexander found himself more engaged than ever. He joined Sophia in guiding the boys, exploring new ways for them to express themselves, and discovering depths of emotion he had long kept buried. The mansion, once a silent witness to grief, had become a vibrant, living testament to resilience, courage, and the transformative power of love. And yet, despite the progress, Alexander knew that the journey was far from complete. There would be obstacles, moments of doubt, and challenges that would test the family in ways they had never imagined. But for the first time, he believed not just in the potential of his sons, but in his own ability to embrace life, to connect deeply, and to create a future defined not by loss, but by hope, courage, and the enduring strength of the human spirit. That night, as the mansion settled into a quiet calm, Alexander stood by the window, watching the stars appear one by one. He felt a sense of gratitude unlike anything he had ever experienced. The journey ahead would not be easy, but with Ethan, Noah, and Sophia by his side, he knew that they could face anything together. And in that knowledge, he found a peace that had eluded him for years, a peace born not of silence, but of love, courage, and the extraordinary power of hope. The morning arrived with a sense of anticipation that Alexander could not shake. The mansion, alive with the laughter and energy of his sons, seemed almost to hum with possibility. Yet there was a subtle tension beneath the surface, a quiet reminder that growth and healing often came hand in hand with challenges that tested the very core of one's spirit. Alexander moved through the hallways with a sense of purpose, drawn toward the kitchen, where Sophia was already preparing a new series of exercises for Ethan and Noah. "Today," Sophia said, her voice calm but firm, "we will face something unfamiliar, something that will test not only your abilities, but your courage, your trust, and your willingness to step beyond fear." The boys exchanged quick glances, their eyes wide with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. Alexander felt a lump rise in his throat as he realized that this day would mark another turning point, not just for the children, but for himself as well. The challenge was deceptively simple in appearance, a series of coordinated movements that required complete trust between the boys, precise timing, and an awareness that went beyond sight or sound. At first, Ethan and Noah hesitated, uncertain whether they could meet the demands of the task. Alexander could sense their fear, their tiny bodies trembling with the weight of expectation. Yet there was something remarkable in the way they faced the challenge and unspoken determination that had been nurtured over weeks of guidance, patience, and love. Sophia encouraged them gently, offering support without interference. Alexander watched, captivated, as the boys began to experiment with the sequence. Their movements were uneven, faltering, and yet each attempt revealed a growing sense of confidence. It was a slow, painstaking process, one that demanded patience not only from the children, but from Alexander himself. He realized that, in many ways, this challenge mirrored his own journey, learning to embrace uncertainty, to face fear, and to trust in the process of life itself. As the morning progressed, something extraordinary began to unfold. The boys, inspired by Sophia's quiet guidance and Alexander's newfound presence, started to synchronize their movements. Each gesture, each step became more fluid, more expressive, more joyful. Alexander felt his heart swell as he observed their triumph over hesitation, their courage to persevere despite the fear that had once held them back. In their determination, he saw reflected the very essence of resilience, the ability to rise again and again in the face of adversity. Then came the moment that would change everything. Sophia guided the boys into a coordinated sequence that required them to move, not only in harmony with each other, but also in synchronization with Alexander himself. The exercise was daunting, pushing all three to their limits. Alexander's hands trembled as he followed their lead, uncertain yet willing to trust. Ethan's eyes shone with determination. Noah's movements were precise yet free, and together they created a rhythm that transcended language, sound, and even their own limitations. Alexander felt a surge of emotion unlike anything he had experienced in years. Tears blurred his vision as he realized the depth of what was happening. This was more than a dance, more than an exercise. It was a moment of pure connection, of trust, of love. The mansion, which had once echoed only with silence and grief, now resonated with the unspoken language of hope and courage. In the movements of his sons, Alexander found a reflection of his own potential to heal, to embrace life, and to step fully into the present without fear. Sophia watched quietly, a gentle smile on her lips. She understood that this moment was not just about skill or coordination, but about transformation. Alexander, who had once been distant and withdrawn, was now present in a way that was raw, vulnerable, and profoundly powerful. The boys, sensing his engagement, flourished under the attention and support. Their laughter, silent yet vibrant, filled the room with a warmth that seemed almost tangible. As the day continued, Alexander felt a shift within himself. He realized that the lessons of the mansion extended far beyond its walls. Life required courage, love required vulnerability, and growth required the willingness to face fear head-on. The boys had taught him, through their determination, their joy, and their resilience, that true strength is found not in avoidance or control, but in trust, connection, and the willingness to embrace each moment fully. By evening, the kitchen had transformed once again into a space of celebration. Ethan and Noah moved with confidence, their movements fluid and expressive. Alexander, participating alongside them, felt an exhilaration that no wealth or achievement could ever provide. The mansion, once a monument to loss and sorrow, had become a living testament to the transformative power of love, perseverance, and the courage to step into the unknown. That night, as Alexander reflected on the day's events, he understood a truth that would guide him for the rest of his life. Every challenge, every fear, every moment of uncertainty carries within it the potential for growth, connection, and profound joy. With Sophia guiding the boys and with himself fully engaged, Alexander knew that they could face any obstacle, overcome any fear, and continue to transform not only their lives, but the very essence of the mansion itself. And in that quiet moment, with the house finally alive with the energy of love and possibility, Alexander felt a sense of hope he had not known for years. It was fragile yet undeniable, a spark that promised to grow into a flame capable of illuminating even the darkest corners of their world. For the first time, he believed, without reservation, that the best was yet to come and that together, they could create a life defined not by loss, but by courage, connection, and the extraordinary power of the human spirit. The sun rose slowly over the mansion, casting a golden light across the polished floors and high ceilings. Alexander stood by the window, watching the light spill into the rooms that had once felt cold and empty. Today felt different. There was a subtle tension in the air, a quiet anticipation that seemed to hum through the walls themselves. It was as if the house, alive with the energy of his sons, knew that something extraordinary was about to happen. Alexander could feel it in his chest, a mixture of excitement, fear, and hope that left him breathless. Ethan and Noah appeared in the hallway, their faces radiant with determination. They had grown so much over the past weeks, their confidence and joy evident in every movement, every glance, every gesture. Sophia followed behind them, her calm presence grounding them, guiding them without ever taking the lead. Alexander watched, marveling at how far the boys had come, how much they had learned not just about movement, but about courage, trust, and the limitless potential of their own spirits. Today, Sophia said softly, turning to Alexander, "We will do something we've never done before, something that will show us what we are truly capable of." Alexander felt his heart quicken. He knew that this moment would be significant, that it would test all they had learned, and that it could change their lives forever. The challenge was simple in description, but monumental in execution. It required Ethan and Noah to lead, to improvise, to express themselves fully, while Alexander followed their guidance, trusting in their instincts and creativity. It was an exercise in empathy, in connection, in vulnerability. Alexander realized that it was not just a test for the boys, it was a test for him as well. Could he let go of control? Could he trust fully without fear? Could he embrace the unknown and allow himself to be transformed? The boys began. At first, their movements were cautious, tentative, and uneven. Alexander felt a familiar pang of worry, a fear that they might falter or fail. But then something miraculous happened. The boys, sensing his hesitation, radiated confidence, their gestures precise yet fluid, their eyes shining with joy and determination. Alexander took a step forward, and then another, and soon he found himself moving alongside them, guided by their energy, their rhythm, and their trust. It was unlike anything he had ever experienced. The mansion, once a silent witness to grief, now thrummed with life. Every gesture, every movement, every glance between the three of them spoke of love, resilience, and the courage to embrace the present. Alexander felt tears stream down his face as he realized the depth of what was happening. This was not just a dance, not just a lesson, but a profound communion of hearts. Sophia watched quietly, her eyes glistening with pride. She had always known that the boys had extraordinary potential, but the transformation unfolding before her surpassed even her expectations. Alexander, once distant and imprisoned by sorrow, was now fully present, vulnerable yet strong, learning from his sons, even as they learned from him. The rhythm they created together was not only a testament to their progress, but a symbol of the extraordinary power of love, trust, and courage. As the morning turned to afternoon, Alexander felt a sense of clarity he had never known. He understood. in a way he could not have before. That life's most profound lessons are rarely found in comfort or certainty. They are found in moments of risk, in acts of vulnerability, in the courage to step forward despite fear. Ethan and Noah had taught him this in their own quiet, determined way. They had shown him that true strength lies not in control or perfection, but in connection, trust, and the willingness to embrace life fully, no matter how uncertain it may seem. The boys finished their sequence, breathless but radiant, and Alexander knelt before them, taking their small hands in his own. He felt a surge of emotion, a combination of pride, love, and gratitude that left him almost speechless. "You've shown me what life can be," he signed, his movements deliberate yet filled with feeling. Ethan and Noah mirrored his gesture, their tiny hands trembling with excitement and joy. In that moment, the mansion itself seemed to exhale, releasing years of sorrow and grief, making space for laughter, love, and hope. That evening, as the family gathered in the garden, Alexander reflected on the journey that had brought them here. The mansion, once a symbol of loss and isolation, had become a sanctuary of resilience, creativity, and connection. Each challenge, each misstep, each moment of hesitation had led them to this point where joy was not measured by wealth, status, or accomplishments, but by the courage to love, to trust, and to fully engage with life. Alexander realized that the true miracle was not the dance itself, but the transformation it represented. His sons had grown beyond fear, beyond limitation, and beyond the silence that had once confined them, and he, too, had grown, discovering a depth of empathy, courage, and presence that he had thought lost forever. The mansion, alive with the energy of hope, was no longer a reminder of grief but a testament to the unbreakable power of the human spirit. As night fell, the stars glittering above the estate, Alexander held Ethan and Noah close. He felt a peace that he had not known in years, a peace born not of absence or avoidance, but of love, courage, and the extraordinary ability to transform hardship into strength. He knew that the journey was far from over, that life would continue to test them in ways they could not yet imagine. But he also knew, with unwavering certainty, that together they could face any challenge, overcome any obstacle, and continue to grow into a life filled with joy, purpose, and unshakable hope. And in that quiet, starlit moment, Alexander understood the greatest lesson of all. Happiness is not a destination, wealth is not a measure of worth, and life's true treasures are found not in what we accumulate, but in the love we give, the courage we embrace, and the bonds we nurture, especially in the hearts of those who teach us to see the extraordinary in the simplest of moments.